A Florida couple mends their relationship by plotting a murder together. But the alleged plot's failure didn't stop the two from landing behind bars. Last week, 21-year-old Arianna Gajraj and 24-year-old Brandon Pirela were arrested and charged with attempted first-degree murder in Lake County, Florida, where authorities say Gajraj lured the victim while Pirela later ambushed the victim by firing off several rounds before the victim was able to get away. According to the Lake County Sheriff's Office, the shooting happened on December 1st. When deputies responded to the shooting, they met up with the victim, whose car had numerous bullet holes, but the victim in the case was able to get away unscathed. According to the probable cause affidavit, when investigators responded to the scene, they noted 21 cartridge casings located across the roadway. 13 of those bullets hit the car. During an interview with investigators, the victim said prior to the shooting, he had picked up his friend Arianna Gajraj from her home as they were planning to smoke marijuana and talk about the issues regarding Gajraj's ex-boyfriend, Brandon Pirela. According to court records, Pirela accused the victim and Gajraj of having a relationship, even sending the victim allegedly threatening messages. The victim reportedly became nervous and asked Gajraj if Pirela had any way to track her location, which she allegedly said he didn't. While driving to a local subdivision, Gajraj reportedly received a call from Pirela asking what she was doing. It's unclear what Gajraj said in response, but when the victim parked his car, that's when everything took a terrifying turn. The victim described a white 2014 Toyota Camry with a dark tent pulling up in front of his vehicle. The driver allegedly exited his vehicle and began firing off nearly 24 rounds with a semi-automatic handgun with an extended magazine, which ended up hitting the victim's car. The victim, with Gajraj still in the car, then drove off to escape the shooter, who then chased the victim onto a local highway, but he was eventually able to flee. Gajraj was later dropped off at a local subdivision where the victim believed she would be waiting for a family member. The victim then called his family and contacted police.
It's very clear that the defendant had a lot of hate for the victim. It appears that there's some sort of jealousy motive here.
Melba Pearson is a former Florida prosecutor. As she explains, the evidence points to a crime of rage.
The amount of casings and the amount of bullets that were fired at this victim definitely shows that this was a crime of rage and a crime of jealousy. And he wanted to obliterate any presence of this person from the face of this earth. So again, very disturbing. But again, this would not rise to the level of a attempted second degree murder, crime of passion, because again, the amount of planning, the premeditation that it went into this is what makes this an attempted first degree murder. But it's very clear that this person's intent was to kill the victim.
According to court records, the victim seemingly started piecing the puzzle together on his own. The shooter reportedly was wearing all dark clothing and a mask. The victim described to investigators he had met Pirela before, and Pirela's height and build was similar to the shooter's. The victim also told authorities he saw a photo posted to Instagram of Pirela with a semi-automatic handgun with extended magazine, the same weapon he saw in the shooting. During the interview with investigators, the victim showed screenshot messages that were sent over Instagram allegedly from Pirela, who had since deactivated his account. According to the probable cause affidavit, Pirela sent messages saying, "Ari told me something about you, and just don't make me F you up. Take it how you want." The victim replied asking Pirela what he meant and asked to speak about the issue, but Pirela didn't respond. However, the victim received additional messages from another Instagram account, which were allegedly from Pirela later that week. Some of those messages said in part, "Do I have to smack the out of you? You want me to drag you down Colonial on live? You got me super effed up. On God, when I see you, it's on sight, and that goes for your friends too." While investigators say the victim did have a firearm in his car, he voluntarily did a gunshot residue test and provided authorities his DNA, and told investigators he did not fire his weapon during the shooting and hadn't in about 6 months. When investigators spoke with Arianna Gajraj, she provided a similar story to the victims. She said the victim had picked her up so they could smoke marijuana. She said she received a call from a blocked number from Pirela on the night of the shooting. Gajraj told authorities during the interview the victim was nervous about Pirela and began loading his firearm while she prepped the marijuana to smoke. She said when the shooter approached them pulling up to the front, the victim immediately began reversing, and although she said multiple rounds were fired, she didn't see Pirela. Gajraj told investigators the victim dropped her off and she walked home. She initially said the last time she spoke to Pirela was a couple days before the shooting, but when investigators told her they're seeking cell data as a part of the investigation, she had a change of tune and said she did call Pirela after the shooting and asked him where he was. He allegedly said he was at home, but she didn't elaborate on why she called him. Gajraj told investigators the two were dating for about a year and were living together on and off since the beginning of 2023. However, the two ended their relationship 3 months prior to the shooting. During the investigation, authorities used license plate readers to piece together more clues. The plates were registered to Pirela's stepfather. However, surveillance video showed a vehicle matching that white-colored Toyota Camry turn around and leave Gajraj homes shortly before 1:30 a.m. Investigators say it's unclear if Gajraj was picked up by Pirela, but it would be consistent with the license plate reader data and Gajraj calling Pirela after the shooting. Cell phone records obtained by investigators revealed more about the alleged sinister plot. According to court records, investigators learned Gajraj had an account on a texting app called Pinger, which she used to communicate with Pirela on the night of the shooting. Authorities say the messages begin with Gajraj confronting Pirela about their previous relationship, them reconciling, then to the alleged murder plot.
It's one of those things where you've watched too many movies and you think that somehow you can execute this plan and somehow never get caught. I don't know if this was some kind of twisted way of her proving her devotion to him or, some sort of strange pact between the two of them. But again, these are real lives and real people. And these are real bullets. I mean, not only could the victim have been seriously injured or killed, what about other people in the area? This was a parking lot. I mean, there could have been children nearby. I mean, there were so many collateral consequences that it could have come from this for not only the people involved, but for the broader community. So it's just the whole overall case is just very disturbing.
The initial plan was for Pirela to get to the victim as he's getting into the car. Then it changed to Pirela blocking the victim in and using Gajraj and their relationship issues as an excuse. In the messages, Gajraj stated she didn't want to be up too late, and Pirela replied, no, he's dying. Gajraj reportedly didn't want them being dumb with guns, but Pirela reiterated multiple times his plan was to get the victim. Gajraj then comes up with a plan of her own for the ambush, telling Pirela to call her from a blocked number so she can show the victim to earn his trust, and then updated Pirela on their location. Pirela then asked her to send a pin with their location, which she sent on iMessage, and it was time-stamped about 12 minutes before the shooting occurred. While Gajraj is not accused of pulling the trigger herself, Pearson says she's still viewed as an equal co-defendant, meaning under Florida law, with the charges Gajraj is now facing, she could spend the rest of her life in prison.
She set the chain of events in motion. She lured the victim to the location. She helped actively plan this crime and knew what was going to happen because she saw the social media posts. She saw the type of language that her ex-boyfriend, current boyfriend, whatever the status would be, was using, that he was intending violence, that he was intending to kill people. And she did not back away from it at any point in time. She could have said, you know what, this has gone too far. Let's just break up and keep moving. She could have let law enforcement know and said, listen, I don't know how I got into the situation, but here I am. I don't want this person to be hurt. There were so many different things she could have done that day. She could have not shown up, right? She could have not answered her phone. There's so many different ways that she could have moved away from this crime and made sure this didn't happen. And she did not do any of those things. So as a result, she is going to be facing the same type of penalty as the co-defendant, likely minus the minimum mandatory because of the fact she did not physically handle the firearm, but she is still facing life in prison.
So could Gajraj later argue that she was coerced by Pirela? Pearson says she could, but the text messages could come back to haunt her.
Listen, if I was her defense counsel, that would be the only angle that I'd be pursuing. I'd be pursuing more of a domestic violence type defense, saying that, she was possibly in fear for her life and, had to play along with the defendant because she was so scared that he was going to harm her or her family, something along those lines. But you also have to have receipts to back that up, right? And it becomes the type of situation where if there's been no prior documented violence between the two of them, there's no family members or friends or anyone who can come out and say, oh, we saw injuries on her, or we witnessed a fight or an argument or a violent text message or something along those lines, it's going to be a very difficult defense to move forward effectively and for the jury to actually believe. But I think that's the only option she really has to go. But again, the evidence is not going to support it because all of the text messages, she looked like an equal participant, not like someone who was, being forced into it. Again, I think the cell phone records are going to be very critical in establishing not only the timeline in terms of the text messages between the two of them, the two co-defendants, and their communications and their planning, as well as their location. I think that's going to be critical. And of course, you're going to have the eyewitness testimony of the victim himself, assuming that, again, he'd be available and willing to testify moving forward. Things do change in cases. And again, going through an experience like that changes someone. So you always have to remember to give the survivor of these types of crimes grace because, again, this is a very, very, very traumatic situation.
The plotting duo were put behind bars last week when Gajraj turned herself in. Meanwhile, Pirela was brought in on a warrant the next day. Both are now facing charges of attempted first-degree murder. Both Arianna Gajraj and Brandon Pirela are being held in jail on no bond. However, a bond hearing is slated for March 20th. Reporting for Law&Crime, I'm Elizabeth Millner.